just like to welcome you to the candidate forum for District 17. In our audience, it looks like we have family members, and there's some nursing students and department heads, and there's somebody from the workforce, and who else do we have here? A couple residents, so anyway, welcome. This gives us an opportunity to learn from the legislators what their issues they'll be facing and their thoughts on those key issues. And so I appreciate your participation today. Just to go over the agenda today, we're going to have opening comments from the legislators, and then Erin is going to moderate the session, and so she has some questions for you. And then we'll turn it over to the audience if you have some questions, and then we'll have a closing. Introduce a couple of the guests. There are two associations in the state of Minnesota, for-profit and non-for-profit. Jeff Bostic is here. He is from Leading Age of Minnesota. You're the Director of Data and Financial Policy with Leading Age. And Erin Bowie here to my left. She's the Director of Governmental Affairs from Care Providers of Minnesota. So between those two organizations, essentially every nursing home and every assisted living is a part of one of those two. Now, I would like to introduce our special guest here. Should go in no particular order. Andrew Falk, just here to my right. He is House District 17, excuse me, thank you. And then Senator Lyle Keenan, and you've been in office for many years. I knew you back in Renville, Minnesota, and so I know you've been part of that for a long time. Representative Dave Baker, he did some terrific work last year for us. And we have Mary Sawatsky. She's running against Representative Baker. Who else do we have there? Mr. Andrew Lang from Senate. You're opposing Lyle Keenan in District 17, of course. And then Tim Miller, Representative Miller. Right? So, you know, we have many issues that are facing long-term care. We need to figure out how we can attract healthcare workers, how we can stabilize the workforce and train our workforce well. We are just coming off a cost-based system, a shift to a cost-based system, and I want to know how you feel that's working or will work, or if there's changes that need to be made. We have one vehicle that'll probably take forefront in the housing side, and that's the Elderly Waiver Program, which seems to be one of our vehicles for financing of that area. And then I guess I'm also curious if you've had a personal experience with moving somebody into a long-term care facility and what that experience was. So I will turn it over to Erin, and she's going to moderate the session. Welcome, Erin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks to Glen Oaks for agreeing to host this. What we'll do is start off with your introductions. You have 2 minutes. And I do have in my bag, I'm going to pull out a 10-second timer when you're getting close to the end. And then we will come through and we have 7 questions that, depending on time, we will do all of them. If we're running short, we will cut 1, possibly 2 out. You have 90 seconds to answer each question, and then there'll be a 1-minute close. We will have time for audience questions at the end, but we do request there are forms in the back that we would like you to write your question down and turn them into me. We're looking for questions that focus on long-term care. And also, we do have the questions we'll be asking in the back if you want to follow along. There's a little background information with those as well. Thanks, and let's get started. Oh, and when we start, the first question, you'll answer the first question, the second question, Senator, you'll answer, and we'll just rotate through so everyone gets a crack at starting first.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Andrew Falk. I live north of Murdoch, where I have a family farm, and I farm outside of the campaign. I'm running for District 17A. I previously served 6 years in the Minnesota House. Was first elected in 2008, served from 2009 to 2014. Should also mention I'm married, and my wife Marnie works for Gillette Children's Specialty Healthcare, and we have a almost 3-year-old daughter, but she'll tell you she's 2.5. My reason for running is I believe in public service, and I want our state government to function better. It's been frustrating to me, the lack of progress that we've seen over the last 2 years, and the inability to get the work done on time is one of the major concerns I have. I want to go back to 2013, 2014, the last 2 years that I was there. We got the job done on time and on budget, and we solved really a significant portion of the state's fiscal issues. And we had basically a decade of cuts to health and human services and local government aid, and we were in a structural imbalance for quite some time. And that took a lot of work. And I know that some people like to criticize people like me that voted to raise taxes. I want to be clear that people know where those revenues came from. We closed more than $600 million worth of corporate tax loopholes, and we raised revenue on the top 2% of wage earners in the state of Minnesota. And what does that mean? Well, so if you're a single filer and you're making more than approximately $170,000 per year, you would pay an additional 2 cents in every dollar above that threshold. If you're a married couple filing jointly, you'd have to make about $250,000 per year before you had your taxes go up, and then every dollar above that would add an additional 2 cents. What do we do with that revenue? That's what allowed us to pay back all the money that had been borrowed from the schools. It allowed us to bring back the homestead credit. It also allowed us to go and invest in long-term care services when we did things like the 5% campaign and the increase in funding for waiver services. We had to have the revenues to actually allow those programs to get the new funding. I look forward to the questions, and thank you all for being here again.
Well, good afternoon, and I'm Lyle Coonan, and thanks for being here. Appreciate that. I was a member of the Minnesota House for nearly 10 years, representing the old District 20B, and have been a member of the Minnesota Senate now for the last 4 years. Most of my life, my adult life, I was a dairy farmer, so that's the background I came from. I graduated from high school in the small town of Maynard, and actually attended Wilmer Botac back before the days of Minskew, and I was in the ag program there. The last couple of years, we did some good work in the budget, I think, as far as addressing budgeting concerns for long-term care and nursing facilities. And also there was some changes made to the way we worked the formula too, the reimbursement rates. And those changes should help nursing homes like this one, for example, that were in the deep rural reimbursement rate area. And so I was glad to see that happen. I wish we could have had more success in funding the waivered services, however, and I know we have more work to do there. The waivered services, well, that includes both elder care and care for the disabled. But I know that when you start talking about waivered services, that's a pretty big part of the budget. And let's say you move that up 5% compared to moving funding for nursing facilities up for 5%. The waivered services are a lot bigger item in the budget. And so that's part of what's happening. The legislative auditor is doing a study on waivered services, and we should see that report here this fall, or when the legislature gets back into session, and I'd be interested to see what that report says too. But, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Baker. I'm a small business person in town, in the area. And it's great to see some of the students here today. Thank you for coming. This is, it can seem really boring and not very important, but when I have had the opportunity to be 2 years in the legislature to actually make policy, I will tell you this job is so important to how we pay our nursing homes, how we pay our home health care service folks, how we take care of the hospitals. I'm just grateful to see you guys in the training mode and wish you the very best. I worked a lot with Jim here right at Glen Oaks. When we were working really hard to identify the need that we heard loud and clear at the house, we heard story after story after story about how they cannot keep anybody in this industry because they have nothing to pay them with. They couldn't keep up their facilities. They couldn't paint the walls and change the carpeting out once in a while. It was really a problem. And as a business owner, I got it because I could understand that need. If I didn't have anything left on my bottom line to renovate my restaurant, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I learned a lot. I asked a ton of questions, and Jim, I appreciate your and your other colleagues in the area, how you helped me understand this complicated bill and how we needed to reform the way we pay nursing homes. So I'm really proud of that work we did. One of the questions you wanted me to get to is a personal story. Again, I'm very fortunate to have my mom and dad are still very healthy and living at home. Oh, was that coming in? Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to say that one for next. But anyway, but thank you. It's great, and we'll pass it along. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming today. I'm Mary Sawatsky, and I was a member of the House of Representatives in 2013-14. And I would like to capitalize a little bit on what former Representative Andrew Falk had mentioned about with the surplus that we had provided by raising taxes. 1/3 of any future surplus we legislated has to go into the rainy day fund. So the rainy day fund is there to build upon so that we do not go back and borrow from our schools or take from Peter to pay Paul. So that's another big asset that came out of the 2013-14 session. I am a special education teacher in Wilmer. I started my career up here in New London Spicer for 1.5 years back in 1986 and 87. And as a special education teacher, I know very well what our communities are having to embrace or get to embrace with over 200 group homes, with our disabled being in the community. And that lends right into the students that are here today, because that you need to have a living and wage, and you need to be able to provide for yourselves. Now, when you're coming to work in a nursing facility or in other jobs that depend on support, it's very difficult for you to make ends meet as far as student debt. And I'm here to talk a little bit about that as well, and the collaboration that we can do to help attract more students and new employees coming to facilities like this. I have 2 children. Jeff is a public school teacher in Painesville, and my son John works outside of New London as a sales representative. And I look forward to this forum today, and I thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Lang. I'd just like to give a thanks to Aaron for the invite out to Glen Oaks here, and Dave, thanks for the little conversation we had prior to. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up in Wilmer, Minnesota. I attended Wilmer High School. I work full-time for Renville County. I take care of the county parks down there. I'm the county park supervisor. So I am married. I have 2 small boys that attend Bold Elementary. The vast majority of my experience, actually, though, after college, I joined the military. So I've been in the military 15 years. I'm an active drilling member of the Minnesota Army National Guard. And that's where most of my experience comes from. So another thing is I'm the only one sitting up in front of you right now that has not been an elected official. I'm an outsider in this group, but so what a good thank you I want to give to Aaron and Dave is for trying to educate us. We're not the subject matter experts on all this stuff. That's you guys out there. So I'd like to say thank you, and hopefully we can listen. And no matter what our opinions are on the topic, you guys are the ones with all the information. So thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is Tim Miller. I'm state representative for 17A, which is Swift, Chippewa, most of Renville, and 4 townships in Kansas County. Absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Glen Oaks. Thank you for everyone that's willing to come out here. As was mentioned earlier, also thank you, students, for were talking about your future when I talked about you with you a little bit back there. Listen to the answers and listen to the issues that you're going to be facing as you get into this. I live in Princeburg. I'm married to my wife Sherry. Between us, we have 7 children. Most of them are out of the house. We have Jacob, who's a special needs. He has autism. He's in our family, or living in our house. And my wife teaches at Ridgewater College for the medical assistant school. She's actually the director there now. And so you could say, and she's also an LPN, moving towards her RN, so as you move on, all LPN students, make sure that you move on if you so choose. Strive for your best. But I was on the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee the last 2 years. That was a special committee that was formed to address these exact issues. This is an issue that's going to grow. The issues related to aging and long-term care are going to grow over the years. And I'm proud of the legislation that we accomplished in the last couple of years. We have a lot more work to do. I think the waiver program is one of our challenges. It's referred to as a 5% campaign with the home care. That is something that I think takes probably front and center for me, that we need to address those things. I understand some of the challenges because my child is special needs, and I know that that's going to be something that is going to be hopefully at the top of the priority on the agenda for the coming year. I look forward to the questions coming our way, and I look forward to hearing from all of you with your questions, because ultimately this is your state, we represent you, and we want to hear from you. So thank you.
Thanks. We'll start off with question 1, which is, describe to us any personal experiences you have had with friends, family, or even yourself with receiving long-term care services, be it in a nursing home, assisted living community, adult daycare, or receiving services in home.
All right, thank you. Actually, as far as family being involved with long-term care, I'm kind of new to that. My parents moved into assisted living in June, so it's been just a few months now. What I have found out is to get all the paperwork done and all the financing in place is quite a complicated thing. It takes many hours worth of work. My parents were fortunate in that a few decades ago they bought long-term insurance, so that will help them a lot. But what I find kind of interesting is I think they're, well, let's see, June, they're in their 4th month there. They still haven't got any money from the insurance company yet. But I understand it's coming, though. It's just a slow process. But that kind of surprised me, too. I just assumed that would be a little faster. Now, as far as, the involvement with MA for families that need that, I have to admit I don't have any experience with that yet. My parents, between their long-term care, when I say experience, I mean personal experience. My parents, between their long-term care and their savings and whatnot, that they can pay their own way, and they will be able to for a while. But it depends on how many years worth of service they'll need too. And I know a lot of families are in that situation. But anyway, just for that, to answer that question, that's my personal experience to this point.
Thank you, Lyle. My personal experience basically is similar to Lyle's. My folks are still healthy and staying at home. I remember my grandfather, Emmett, went into the nursing home when he was about 97 years old, and he was there for about 3 years, and he died about 2 weeks before his 100th birthday. Had a really nice experience there, but I just remember how difficult it was for him to transition from the farmhouse to the nursing home. And I really could see firsthand how hard it was on my mom, because putting her dad in a place where he couldn't be on his own anymore and drive the car, and it's just a real transition. So that's been a number of years, and I was able to kind of understand that. And really, I haven't had a chance to see it firsthand until I really started visiting the nursing homes in the area and seeing what it's like walking through the hallways and visiting with residents. We've got 10,000 people a day in the United States turning 65 years old, every day. And so we have to make sure we find the best resources and the best employees that have that care to take care of our folks. These are the people that fought world wars for us. These are the people that gave us an amazing country, and the best gift of all is our freedom. So I think we take a lot of that thing very seriously, and I'm sure looking forward to continuing our support for the nursing homes.
My experience started back in the 1970s. My grandmother was a neighbor of about a block and a half away from my house, and then when she was placed into the Grand Falls Manor, we would walk. The manor was so wonderful for my family. They put a table outside a window, so as for my house, we would walk down the alley because we were in the backyard or the back alley of the Grand Falls Hospital. As we'd walk down the alley, we would look up on the second floor. My grandma had a table there. We would play checkers with her, but she could look down at us kids. I was one of 9 kids. As we walked to school, we'd wave if she was there in the morning, and when we'd come back home, we'd turn around and see if she was looking, and we'd wave back or run up and say hi. The Grand Falls Manor was always very accommodating to my family. They would keep a jar of pickles in the refrigerator, like right back there during lunch, and my mom's homemade jam. My experience as from a family perspective, having a grandma in a nursing home has always been very positive. And when I hear of stories that families don't look forward to that step in their lives, I just have such a different background from what I'm hearing from stories. And I understand it is an adjustment. However, I started also as a candy striper at the Grand Falls Manor. I did not end up going in that kind of a career, but all those things help young people learn and groom and understand that there are other professions out there and available for and stepping stones to getting into the career that you are starting in and hopefully will continue.
This is an issue for me is actually pretty near and dear right now. We've been, the last past few years with my grandmother, we've been working very hard trying to keep her at home. She has a home health aide, and you know she's very healthy actually for her age, and she's doing well. The home health aide does help us with some meal prep and some bathing and personal hygiene. She's there 3 days a week, but she didn't have long-term health care, long-term care insurance. So what that means is that her savings have been dwindling. Between Social Security and what she's picking up from Medicare, it's been a tough road, and I appreciate that. We're kind of at the point now within my family that we're going to be looking for some either assisted living or nursing home of some kind. So yeah, it's been a near and dear issue to me right now, and the timing couldn't be better to be talking about it. So.
Well, I've had the privilege of having a front row seat to probably every step and every stage with long-term care, the good and the bad with it. So with my 2 parents, depending on which one it was, we had everything from, I actually forgot about the home health aide, we had that with my dad for a while. But when they moved out of their house, they went into independent living, and then they went into more of an assisted living situation. My dad actually spent some time, a couple different times, in one of the rehabilitation units where you go there for 30 days or 60 or what have you. And then eventually to the point where my mom was in a hospice home. So I really had good experience through each of these things and learned a lot through those experiences. When you get to my age, and I think we're experiencing this more and more because there's such a large population that's older than us and they're living longer, we take on roles that sort of reverse. We can't become the parent to our parents, but you have to take on certain care and certain needs. And that's going to be one of the challenges as we move forward, because when we have someone that moves into a facility, of course we have the professional staff that help and do a great job. But how the family relates to that and their relationship with the staff, with their family, that's one of the things that I'd like to see us get ever better on. From when I was younger and I saw how it was really just kind of standoffish, you go and visit your family and then you go and leave and they're taken care of by professional staff. It's much more integrated now, and I think we need to keep going in that direction.
My experiences for my own family is relatively limited, and I guess it's fairly lucky that my grandparents could stay in their homes until they were pretty up in their years. But my wife's, both of her grandmas spent some significant time in nursing homes and getting care, and really appreciative of the work and everything that was done for them. Both have since passed away. Her one grandmother spent a number of years down in Rochester, and she had some dementia issues. And I think we were lucky in one sense that she was always very happy, and she was just real easy to get along with that way. You know, sometimes people can sometimes become more frustrated as they're not able to remember things as well. But the people and the care that she received were excellent, and we're very thankful that there were people that were willing to help her in that at the twilight of her life.
Okay, on to question 2. The senior care sector in Minnesota is facing severe staffing shortages to adequately cover the needs of Minnesota's growing senior population. According to the Long-Term Care Imperatives last legislative survey, there are at least 2,500 vacant positions in Minnesota nursing homes statewide. While the state legislature made some progress in improving wages and training opportunities for those working in this field in the last biennium, it is clear that more needs to be done, as it is projected that demand for people in this field will only continue to grow. What policy ideas do you have to address this issue?
Thank you, Erin. That's a great question. Some of the policy issues that I know we worked on last session, 2015, was to, and as a member of the Jobs and Energy Committee, I was the vice chairman of a committee that really kind of also works at workforce issues around the state of Minnesota. So what we also heard many times, again, with testimony from people, is that there's so many shortages in the state. One of the bills I carried was a long-term care scholarship program for students and folks wanting to get into this industry. And currently, I think there's about $1 million in this fund. It's a home and community-based scholarship fund that hopefully a lot of students can be able to take advantage of that. Also, again, I'm a big supporter of the 5% campaign, also kind of known now as the Best Life Alliance program. Again, I think Jim had alluded to that earlier, that that's more support for the industry that has to come along to make sure we can find the resources to keep people coming into this industry. As a small business owner myself, there are workforce shortages in almost every industry. This one has to be able to compete. And so I think with some of these things that we've been working on and some of the ideas that I think are coming down the road, working alongside Ridgewater with some CNA classes, I think are really important for us to make sure that we keep the bench with people on it so they're ready to come into the service and be able to fill these positions.
I'd like to capitalize a little bit on that CNA program that actually is a collaboration between 3 entities. The Certified Nursing Assistants program is between the Rice Hospital, Ridgewater College, and Wilmer High School. And also high school relates into the area learning center. Some of those students are for the first time actually learning the skills that, the beginning skills, learning the beginning basis of working in a nursing home or long-term care facilities. And they are exposed to knowing and understanding older people issues, and it may be not necessarily that they want to be directly in the care of in care or nursing, but maybe something with dietary or administration, and these are great stepping stones. I am very much concerned about rural areas being with these projections and reductions in staffing, and so we need to be cognizant of that. I think student loan debt forgiveness is something that we can certainly talk about, or tax credits for incentives to go into healthcare. I worked on the 5% campaign with the home-based entities, and it was a start, but when you can still work here in this building or in any group home in our community, and you can make more money at Aldi's or at Jimmy John's, and with less of the physical burden on your being. It's not, the satisfaction is not there, and people will say that they want to work with the elderly or with the community home-based facilities, but, you know, you can make more money doing something that's not as hard on your body. Sometimes that's where you go. So we need to look at those things and make sure that we are understanding our needs.
For me, the policy change or the idea of changing policy is not a bad one. And in fact, I think the partnership between legislators as a whole and groups like your own, I think are an important step in that. And it's an ongoing issue that I think that you've definitely taken the first couple steps right. I think that our policy definitely needs to reflect our aging population and the fact that there is a larger majority or a larger portion of the population that is above 65. I also believe that some of the steps made during the last legislative session were good. I think they were done in the right way. I think that it's a continual process that we need to be working on, and I would agree with that. So that's probably a short answer, but I think I'm going to stick with that.
Well, I think we need to get creative, and I want to talk a little more about the landmark legislation that we did in 2015. Over time, things change, and things have changed in the long-term care issues, and we just weren't properly funding, and the system was not set up right. So we were able to do two things in 2015. We were able to give a real boost in funding. In my district alone, it was like $5 million more in funding directly to the facilities that serve our elderly. We were able to change and tweak some things on long-term care insurance, which I believe is going to be one of the questions. As Aaron said, we went a long way, but there is a long way to go. One of the challenges we have is a qualified, effective, energized workforce, and I think we need to be creative. So there are opportunities, as Representative Baker said, for scholarships. We had passed some tax credits in some different areas in health fields last year that was vetoed by the governor, but we did pass some of those. I think those are good. I'm real big on experiential learning, fancy term for internships and stuff like that. You expose young people, or you expose people that are looking to get into new areas firsthand on some of this work. I'd like to see more collaboration between private industry and also schooling and also these students. So I think Ridgewater, Minsky as a whole, has been doing a great job with some of their teaching. Brag about my wife and what she does. That's an opportunity for people to get into the health field and be exposed at an entry level, get paid very well, and then move on from there and perhaps expand on their career.
Well, the way we get more people into this is we have to pay more. I mean, Mary said it well, when you're competing with Aldi's or Jimmy John's or whoever else that is able to offer more higher wages, it's a problem. And let's not kid ourselves. This is hard work here. It really is. You know, I support things like the CNA programs, scholarships, try to get people exposed to it. But internships and tax credits aren't a solution. You actually have to have the paycheck there. You have to have enough money to pay people. And I want to step back 1 second here and talk about the reason why we were able to do the increases that they talk about was because we had revenue. We raised that in 2013. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that fortunately didn't happen. We started this last biennium with nearly $2 billion surplus. There was a tax bill that cut $2.2 billion worth of taxes, essentially would have wiped out the surplus. Right now, we currently have a $900 million surplus. There's also a bill to go and dedicate between $600 and $650 million out of the general fund to transportation. Take that away from the $900 million surplus, we're back to $300 million. If you throw on that tax cut that they voted for, we're back in the hole. What did the last decade teach us? When we saw cuts, where do they come from? Health and Human Services, nursing homes, long-term care, hospitals, or property tax aids and credits, which is cuts of local government aid, county program aid. And so it's real easy to take credit for spending, but when you did not have to actually do the hard work to raise the revenue, I have a little issue with that. And so the only reason, once again, I want to reiterate that we were able to do the 5% campaign and any other raises was because a few of us up here voted to raise taxes, and I articulated who we raised them on before.
All right, this is a big subject, and I forgot somebody mentioned earlier that, you know, there's labor shortages in all kinds of areas, and that's true. So not only is it the issues that effectively direct healthcare as far as developing workforce, you're actually competing in an overall labor market where there's shortages. So it's a tough challenge. Some of the things that have already been mentioned, but I think are important, are you know, the pay. So in other words, especially for labor and services now, we got to get them caught up, get those reimbursement rates up, and keep an eye on the reimbursement rates that go to nursing facilities so they keep up so that they can compete. I think scholarships are a good idea, loan forgiveness, grants, all of those things are important, and that's a matter of competing again. And I think another important step is the pipeline for a labor force. And what I mean by that is to actually get into the high schools and make known to high school students, even junior high school students, I don't think you can start too early, that what's available in the healthcare field and what's the various jobs that are available there and what the potential pay is. That's important. Another thing that's becoming pretty clear is that for students to become aware of what's available for them, their parents need to be involved too. So for any recruiting efforts with young people, it's important to include the parents too.
Thank you. Moving on to financing long-term care. 60,000 individuals are turning 65 each year in Minnesota now until the year 2030. Approximately 7 out of 10 Americans who reach the age of 65 in the next 5 years could expect to need some level of long-term care services and supports in their lifetimes. Yet, most often, individuals have no planned way of covering these expenses. A survey conducted by the Minnesota Department of Human Services in 2010 found that 32% of Minnesotans don't know how they'll pay for their long-term care, while another 18% expect a government program to pay for their long-term care. This dynamic means there will be a growing strain on taxpayer dollars unless alternatives are identified. In your opinion, what policy changes should be explored to help seniors and their families finance their potential long-term care needs?
So we need to know that many people do not have assets greater than their Social Security checks. So that we'll start there. But also as an educator, I do believe that we need to be educating our employees all the way through. And I think that that is something that the employers need to make sure that they're helping to inform and educate their employees. And so I believe that that education can start from the employer, the boss. In whatever job there is, about what is long-term care, what does that mean for our environment, for your future. Savings is important for long-term care, and this behavior needs to be incentivized to help that jumpstart go with our young people, middle-aged. And so we need to be thinking about what I, as a mother of 2 young, under 30-year-old sons, when you're looking at college debt to be paid back, the mortgage, vehicles, 1, maybe 2, and I'm not saying recreational vehicles, and daily living needs, family needs, and then now we're talking about long-term care, and plus the other insurances that we need. So I think that this is a comprehensive, we need to be taking a look at it, and I think our employers can help facilitate some of those conversations as well.
Well, I want to allude back to my grandmother on this one. You know, the average cost for home health aid per month, at least this is what I looked up, was $3,800 a month. Assisted living is $3,600 a month. Now, my grandmother's actually getting a little better deal than that, and I don't think it was an oversight by any means, but she doesn't have long-term insurance, long-term care insurance. So I think there's a couple things we could do. One, educate younger individuals. And who knows, maybe in your early 40s, start talking about long-term care insurance. Help broaden that pool, get it out so that health coverage for an extended period of time isn't so expensive, and You know, I'm gonna be 40 pretty soon here, and I carry some long-term health care insurance right now, so I don't think it's a bad idea for some of that to be going on. But also, possible incentives to some of those insurance companies to push for lower, younger age individuals to pick up some of those plans. So it's just a couple of ideas I had.
Andrew, I have to say I'm impressed that you carry long-term care insurance. That's good for you. I'm very concerned. As Mary alluded to, our assets, our wealth is going in directions that are kind of every other direction except for retirement. My parents' model was what we often saw for the last generation, to where they saved up their whole lives through their retirement, either a direct fund or a pension, and through that process, as they reached their larger needs with long-term care, they were able to dip into those. My parents paid for all of their stuff directly through their retirement, and they were able to do that until they were both passed away. I just don't see that as being the model for the future. The expenses are going to ever increase, and I think that because of some of the different things that we're facing, healthcare and insurance for right now alone, that Mary mentioned some of the debts that people have in their lives now. We just are not going to have those dollars. One thing that we can do is the long-term care insurance. We're kind of touching on this, but I think that's the direct answer to your question is. And in committee, we talked about this, and there was a couple tweaks to the law that we needed to do. I think we need to do more, not only to incentivize, but there's kind of disincentives with how the system, again, because we're talking about a system that was set up 25 years ago. So we need to modernize that. I know one of the challenges with long-term care insurance was that it had to do with nursing homes. Well, more and more we have our elderly in assisted living and other things. And there's people who've paid into long-term care insurance their whole lives and it doesn't qualify for what they're doing. So those are some of the adjustments that I think we need to do.
Well, this is an important question, and I kind of think something here where it's if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's one of the challenges. There's a lot of people that are just not thinking about what costs are going to be and their care needs. And people do have to start saving, I understand that. But when paychecks are tight and when incomes are tight and you've got the mortgage and student loans and vehicles, it becomes difficult. My wife and I, in our personal life, we try to maximize our savings every paycheck. We think that's important. We want people to think about long-term care insurance. But from a policy perspective, from a state perspective, let's not kid ourselves. We're going to have a lot of people relying on the public programs to go and help cover the costs. And we know we have an aging population. We know we've got more needs. We've got more people that are going to require services. The question is going to become, is the legislature willing to go and appropriate the necessary resources to go and address some of those needs? Right now, our 2016-17 general fund budget, 28.8% of our budget spent on health and human services. And if we include federal dollars, and then health and human services become the largest part of the budget with the federal grants we're able to draw down. But as the need grows, there's going to have to be resources that people are willing to appropriate to these programs. Otherwise, you'll be forced to do more with less. People won't get the type of care and services that they deserve. And so there's no easy answer here.
Yeah, this is an important question, and of course we can do things to entice people to buy long-term care insurance. I think that's important. Maybe there'd be some tax incentives, some things like that. And of course to encourage savings, that's just good financial planning. And as long as I mention it, I think that needs to start in high schools, but that's a side subject. But there are some things we can do, but I think it's important to know, or I think we all know, that the cost of healthcare has outstripped the inflation rate for a couple decades now. So even people that plan properly may be able to pay for their own long-term care for a while, but if they need it for any length of time or any number of years, that they may run out of money. And so then we come to the taxpayers having to help pay for the bill. And when it comes to that subject, that's an area in the state budget that we're seeing expand and will continue to expand. So that, with that in mind, I think as we look into the future, we're going to have to look at more efficient and ways of delivering the service too. And that's where we'll need help from providers, of course, is to come up with ideas on how to do that. But I think that's going to be an important part of this. And also, there may be ways, especially for people that don't need real intense care, to have the family members involved in the care too.
I think a lot of things have been said, and I would agree with really pretty much most of what everybody is saying up here, because it's about early education. It's about making sure people, gosh, even as young as Andrew Lang, that's the time to start thinking about long-term insurance. I'm in my early 50s, and I would like to, I really need to get going on that with my wife as well, just so that we have a plan. And again, Mary's right too when it comes to the employers. We are a major communication tool to the employees, and they trust us a lot of times for this kind of information. And I think that through our trying to provide health insurance for them, trying to provide them good, savings plans or healthcare savings plans, those are the things that they rely on employers to help them understand these complicated issues. So long-term insurance is a big part of this. Actually, 2015, we reduced some mandates to make long-term care more affordable because we lowered some of the mandate percentages that were automatically being increased. So we try to make it a little bit easier for folks to get into this long-term care insurance. Again, we just need to start talking about it early, get people to understand this is the future, and we have to make sure that we are paying for our future stay, and we're living longer. We are living much longer than my grandfather Emmett did. So I think we need to just plan on that and be ready to pay for it.
Jumping down a little bit. Minnesota has made great strides in creating choices and options for seniors to receive care outside a nursing home, as evidenced by the fact that twice Minnesota has been named #1 on the long-term care scorecard for providing choice of settings. However, the public program that funds community care options for low-income seniors, called the Elderly Waiver Program, has not been significantly reformed in years, and as a result, the program falls short in covering the needs of seniors on this program. Seniors, in turn, have difficulty finding community care providers that are willing to accept elderly waiver payments. Ultimately, low-income seniors are frequently left with limited options, such as more costly nursing homes to meet their needs. The question is, do you support reforms to the Elderly Waiver Program so that community care options can become more accessible to low-income seniors throughout the state? And do you have specific ideas of what should be included in those reforms?
The short answer is yes. I'm open to policy change. I would say that I think the last time it was reformed was 2011, so we're on the 5-year mark. The one thing that I did notice as far as the senior waiver program, the elderly waiver program, is that the consultation program, or the consultation progress, talking to my family members, that was part of the gripe, okay, this is ridiculous, how long is this taking, how in-depth it goes. So that'd be one area that I would go to. And then also, part of the process was once you're done with that consultation process, you actually go off the rolls, as far as I was understanding. One other thing I would say is continue to progress with that patient or the possible receiver of the elderly waiver as far as they go. Don't bring them off the rolls. Keep them on there and follow along with them as long as they're there. So for the most part, I just took that as kind of a burdensome process. Ultimately, though, I guess I'd like to see seniors in their homes as long as possible. Try to keep them in assisted living as long as possible after that, and I think they'll live longer, happier lives that way. At least in my personal experience, that's the way it's worked out. So,
There's no doubt that keeping an elderly person in their home, the longer you can, the better. It's better for them, it's better for their family, it's better for the expenses involved, it's better for the resources that are taxed on or the resources that are on the or the burden is put on the taxpayers. I apologize. And so this is a point of emphasis that I do think that we need to grow on. And it is a real challenge because the elderly waiver, or the waiver programs in general for like special needs kids, for example, I've seen that firsthand as well. It's funded, it's short funded. We had the 5% program that did change its name. I apologize, Dave, but that's the program. When we looked at that, one of the challenges is we looked in the fiscal note on that, the cost of that was going to be about $92 to $94 million a year. It takes a lot of courage because it doubles in a biennium. So we have on top of that, we talk about education, we talk about transportation, we talk about a lot of different issues, and we have to figure out ways to prioritize these things. And that's as my opponent has said, takes a lot of hard work. And I think that there are a lot of people doing a lot of good hard work. I believe that I am, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Yes, I support reforms to the elderly waiver program, and I want to see more done to keep people in their homes, keep them comfortable, keep them where they want to be, close to their family, close to the place that they grew up and where they chose to live. I think that's all good. Simple thing is question of money. Are we going to put money in to support these programs? And if you want to go and cut $2 billion worth of taxes, you don't have the money for things. And then you get competing resources for nursing homes and long-term care, and you get competing resources for education, and everybody wants local government aid increased. So it really becomes a question of priorities. And for me personally, I don't think that we need to give big business more corporate tax cuts. I wouldn't have voted for those bills. I know some people up here did vote to give some pretty significant tax cuts, but that takes resources out of the general fund that I think are better spent taking care of people and improving the people. And I know we're talking about long-term care issues here, but my personal thought is when we invest in people, whether it's education, whether it's workforce training, whether it's the care they receive at the end part of their life, we're fulfilling our responsibility to take care of Minnesotans.
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, we're going to need to look for efficiencies as we move into the future to cover the growing number of people who are going to need services. And so as far as reform goes, yeah, anything that leads to that efficiency. Now, when I say efficiency, I'm not hinting at that we have to not be concerned about the quality of care too. That has to be important in this reform also, that the quality of care be maintained. But I agree that it needs to be done. As I mentioned earlier too, the legislative auditor is doing a report on waiver services, and then I'm looking forward to see what that report has to say too about maybe having some ideas on reforming the waiver services system. But I think it's, all of us in this room realize that as you look into the future, we're going to make some changes to continue to make things work.
Keeping folks in homes longer is always the best thing. I will tell you, as a citizen legislator, we rely on people like Aaron and Carrie and the folks in St. Paul to give us the right information about what really can be done with the resources that we think we have to get the best output for those resources. So again, I'm excited about the work group that's put together. I know that they are planning on actually delivering to the legislature in 2017 some ideas about how do we take care of, how do we make the home, the waiver program better, more efficient. It's going to have to do with having good technology. Those are other things that we're working really hard on. So it isn't just staying in the homes. We've got to make sure we're staying in the homes and being safe. All this wearable technology that you're seeing now, all this, these software programs you can get to make sure mom and dad are staying at home and you're safe, and yet children can make sure that they're moving about in their house to make sure that they're doing okay. So I'm fully supportive of it, looking forward to the work group outcomes, and looking forward to getting some things done.
Certainly, we know that the people are the happiest when they're at home and where they're near loved ones. It's the cheapest way of living, but it also needs to be a safe environment. Recently, I just door knocked a elderly couple. And as a mandated public education reporter, I really felt that this was an environment that I needed to report. And I did happen to know that they went to my church, and certainly know that the church environment is aware of their home living as well. So I think this is something that we are all in together, right? It's a village that helps everyone out. But I also look at the Southern Prairie Community Care collaboration that is 12 counties in southwestern Minnesota that have done a joint powers program. That it's actually a kind of a pilot type of a study, and where they have 28,000 members, and they have saved taxpayers $10 million in this collaboration. And so I think that there are some things that are happening out there that are that we can emulate, and maybe go and instead of reinventing the wheel, we can go down and talk to the Southern Prairie Community Care group. Part of that, it's Yellow Medicine County, all the way down to Worthington, et cetera, in that corner of the state. So I think that it's most important to be looking at this, and I am interested in seeing the reforms, but I think that we can look at existing programs that DHS has already provided and is in collaboration with from DHS and our counties in southern Minnesota.
I'm going to step past question 5, and we'll come back to it if we have time. But looking at what we have, I'm not sure if we're going to make it through all the questions. So moving on to question number 6. With advances in telemedicine, seniors are able to connect with their caregivers and healthcare providers without leaving their home. However, public policy is not necessarily kept up in this area, and many of these services are not reimbursed by public programs. How would you support updates to the policies to create better access to telehealth options?
Well, telemedicine is very exciting and an area that I think is going to grow in many different ways. First of all, because of what it can perform, how it can address some shortfalls in some areas, and also reduce costs on doing things that can be very effective through the telemedicine. So because telemedicine is emerging, and there's new technologies coming out and stuff like that, there are burdens and there are some hurdles. So I think that's one area where policy can change to make that a little more accessible. Reimbursement, I would fully support. If there are medical procedures that are being done now that are reimbursable, and we can do it through telemedicine, then by all means, I believe that should be reimbursed as well.
I'll keep this brief because I'd like to get to question 5. But yeah, I do support telemedicine and want to see more done to go and try to allow the payment structures to follow that. I mean, if you're seeing a doctor or provider in person or through an electronic means and the service is the same, the payment structure should be very similar, if not the same.
I think telemedicine has a lot of potential, especially for rural Minnesota, because of the distances we have to travel sometimes. So I think that it's a way of providing better care and efficient care. Now, as far as the reimbursement, I think it's important, of course, that the public programs reimburse at the full rate, but also insurance companies also should be reimbursing at the same rate. But I think it's something that's coming and important, and we should embrace it and make it work.
Again, I agree with a lot that's been said. Reimbursing the facilities for that technology is really important. I know that I carried a bill that also kind of helped physician assistants and doctors that would be their medical director above the physician assistants, that the doctors could actually take on more assistants to be able to cover more area, to be able to cover especially the areas in rural Minnesota where there was only a limit in Minnesota of 5, and we brought that limit up so that the doctors could actually have more people covering. So when you're calling in, or again through telemedicine or telehealth, you've got the ability to have a really qualified person there checking on you that are more accessible now to rural Minnesota. It's a big important thing, and the reimbursement part of this is important because already so much of the reimbursements to the facilities does not cover their cost. We need to get that better.
Absolutely, I believe that telehealth is the way of the future, and in keeping a lot of people in their homes they do rely on good broadband internet access. So this is going to jump into another avenue that I am very passionate about, and that is funding broadband internet for all Minnesotans. In a recent study in Kansas County indicated that we need $60 to $68 million to have all citizens in Kansas County up and running. Now, some folks think that that's an underestimate, but I had a visit with a woman at her home, and she said that she is hooked up to a medical device that every day she needs to report into her the St. Cloud Hospital. And there are days that it takes her 2, 3, and 4 retries with her internet to get her device to send to St. Cloud. And I'm not in north part of New London, and I'm not down in Lake Lillian, and I'm not over in Diamond Lake. I was in the smack dab middle of Wilmer, Minnesota. And her internet did not go through with her medical device. So this is something that we need to continue to work on, and to me, it makes sense. We don't have to make a trip to St. Cloud with her health needs. She can stay at home, and a lot of us would be welcome a better system and continued support and resources in this area.
Wow, it must be pretty good to be part of an industry where everybody agrees on something for a change. I agree. I say the technology that has come into well, every aspect of our life has been so advancing, and when it comes at long distances, as far as medicine comes, as far as medicine goes, that's a positive thing. And when it comes to the reimbursements, I have to agree with everybody up here that everybody needs full reimbursement, and yeah, that's what it is.
We'll run through question 7. If everyone goes as quick as they did on this, we'll have time to get back to question 5. As technology advances, electronic monitoring devices, such as hidden recording devices, are becoming more and more commonplace. On one hand, these sorts of devices have been very helpful in preventing abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. On the other hand, there have been instances where vulnerable adults have been recorded without their knowledge or consent. In your view, how do lawmakers strike a balance in using technology such as electronic monitoring to protect vulnerable adults while ensuring that their privacy is protected?
This is a really good question. I'll be the first one. I'm not an expert on the subject matter of electronic monitoring. One thing I would say is, depending on the level of how vulnerable the adult is, maybe talking and getting a consent form or some type of agreement with the responsible party for that vulnerable person would be the best way to go. But this is one area where, I'm fortunate enough to be reelected, that would like people in your industry and people that have first-hand experience with this to please bring their thoughts and things, ideas of subject matter to me, because I want to hear more.
This is a subject that we spend a lot of time on the legislature, whether it has to do with the cameras the policemen wear, or the monitoring that happens in cities, that type of thing. I think we got to be it's important to remember we have to protect a person's privacy, so that's really important. What the correct answer is, I'm not going to be able to tell you. This is quite a bit out of my area of expertise. I'm just going to make a general statement that there has to be a balance there. And I don't know what the checks and balances are either, but there has to be some form of checks and balances. We don't want to set a situation where we're trying to trap somebody either. I mean, it has to be a legitimate reason for doing this type of thing. And again, I'm not an expert on this, so I'm going to leave my statements real general.
This is another 2016 legislative thing that passed. Again, it's another work group that's being assembled to report back in the 2017 session. It's actually called the Residential Care and Services Electronic Monitoring Work Group. I am not a big fan of continuing to have lots and lots of work groups, but these are new issues that are emerging. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of wearable technology, there's cameras, and I think this is an important part of making sure people are safe, but also, especially for the vulnerable adults, we have to make sure that they are protected because they don't have the ability to look at things like we do if they aren't seeing things clearly, but we just have to make sure that this work group does their work. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to hear their findings and get on with what is the right way to take the next step with providing this important policy.
Well, I look forward to working with you on this issue because clearly we can see that there is no right or wrong answer at this point. However, it goes back to having good, high quality, dependable employees. And when you have good, high quality, dependable employees, they feel valued and they're being compensated for their services, their gifts to our very high need individuals. Speaking about those high need individuals, we have such a diversity in our long-term care facilities today with our memory issues, with the mental illness issues that you are all enduring and taking care of. And then we have this thing called the sandwich generation, where our loved ones are being taken care of their children, but their sons and daughters also have their own children. So this is a really, with a high mobility of living away from your elderly parents or loved ones, it's a tough situation because you can hear horror stories from afar, and the son or daughter or family member could be quite far away from the facility. It's a two-way street, however, too. With the challenges that you have in these facilities, there's some tough, high-needs individuals that we also need to protect our employees. So I think that this is an all-encompassing situation. It's a two-way street, and I think we need to look at it in a respectful way. And I look forward to hearing, working with you in coming up with some solutions and ideas.
Well, I think this kind of piggybacks on the technology question from just prior. And the police camera legislation that has just gone through, I think, is a good roadmap for exactly how we should go with that. I think within the industry, you guys are very familiar with privacy issues as far as HIPAA goes, and it's by no means are you surprised on when it comes to electronic monitoring that privacy issues are going to be coming into play. So that being said, I think that you are still the subject matter experts, and I'm more than willing to listen to anything you have to say on the topic.
With modern technology, one thing that I've seen is you have this constant tension between data privacy and safety, or helping people, or taking care of people. I just jotted down some of the things that we've dealt with in the last couple of years on this issue of body cams, license plate readers, real ID. There was a silver alert where we just wanted to be able to have a way so that if an Alzheimer's patient can wear a bracelet, and if we get it, kind of like an amber, blue alert. Yeah, but in any case, now it seems really simple and straightforward. We can resolve this issue, right? Well, it gets into some privacy issues very quickly. One of the struggles that I had with my parents was because they saw lots of different doctors, they would often be over-medicated. Well, they were over-medicated because those doctors couldn't share certain information. And they said, isn't there a way we can share this information? They said, not without breaching HIPAA law. So this is something we're gonna have to struggle through. I look at the body cams only because that was the clear and present example of that was a nonpartisan issue. And it was nonpartisan in the sense that there were Republicans and Democrats that were on this side, and there were Republicans and Democrats that were on that side, and they did not agree with each other. Body cams probably took longer than this, but I know that in our session, it was worked directly over 2 years. And we came up with compromise. I think you're right, talking to the industry, talking, conversation, coming up with these things, being able to navigate through the waters to figure out what's best, where we can protect people's privacy and yet get to the needs that we have need to accomplish so we can do that.
Okay, we'll quickly go back to question 5. If there are any audience questions that you want to hand in to me, do that now while they're answering question 5. And I'll ask that you try and keep it to about a minute so that we can get through it. In order to meet the needs of Minnesota's aging population, Minnesota's nursing facilities will need to be remodeled, renovated, and sometimes replaced altogether. Do you support efforts to reform how Minnesota pays nursing facilities to renovate or replace their buildings?
Well, the short answer is yes, I do. You gotta have the proper facilities if you wanna take care of people. And some of these homes I know have been around, well, they were, when I look at the communities around the area here, some of the original nursing facilities were built about the time I was born or even before, so they've been around a while. And so I think it's important to know that we have to replace when necessary, and of course to keep everything modern and safe and workable for the employees and workable for the people receiving the services. Again, when it comes to the actual reform that would be required, we of course have to keep in mind cost and how it's paid for, which is just good budgeting. But on the other side of it, I would look to the providers for ideas too on how to do that, and so that the costs don't run out of control also. But it is important, we have to keep our facilities workable, and so that the people who are employed there can provide proper services.
And I think it's also important that we allow nursing homes to have the exception rules. If they want to do some renovations and they want to shut down for a little bit and do those renovations, they can do so without affecting their moratorium and not being able to expand or decline the beds. I also remember when we worked hard on the reform in 2015 that we didn't encumber the nursing homes to only put those increases to just labor. We needed to make sure that the nursing homes had the ability to also use some of that new money for other, increasing in funding, that like food costs or replacing some carpet here and there. We heard loud and clear that the biggest need was employees and keeping and retaining employees. But I know Jim, as the CEO here at Glen Oaks, knows how to run this a lot better than folks sitting in St. Paul. So I think that our job was to make sure they had the best use of those resources and could decide for this facility what is best for here. It may not be the same at Bethesda or Rice Care, but it's what you needed here. So we want to make sure that we keep that decision local, but so pretty proud of how we made sure that you had the ability to do that.
Of course, I support the renovation and remodeling of facilities. Just as in public education, nothing stands still. Technology, equipment is constantly upgrading and getting better, but if you don't have those resources available to you, you are waiting in the wings, and somebody's going to find a better facility that you don't, with equipment or environment, atmosphere that you don't have. So we all know that a positive environment for families, loved ones coming here to visit, the family to come here and visit their loved ones, the atmosphere, the environment is all part of feeling safe for their loved ones. And so most definitely we need to continue to be looking at the upgrades of our facilities. And it's not just something to do because it looks nice, but because our loved ones do expect or should be treated with the utmost respect and with good equipment. I do remember my mother having a stroke, and she, in her final days, was in the Grand Falls Manor, and to know that they could lift her, and the lift, you have a better word for it, I'm sure, but I just thought, oh wow, you're saving so many. You don't need 2 people necessarily or 3 to help her out of bed, into a chair, into wherever she might need to go. But it was something that maybe an individual could do, and that's all part of the technology and equipment that is ever evolving. So I think that we need to continue to support you in that.
Mine's going to be a short answer too. I'm going to say yes. Obviously, the upkeep of our facilities has got to be paramount. We
can't let our facilities dwindle. I think we're kind of in the same boat when it comes to a lot of different things, whereas we need to put money into our roads and bridges, we need to put money into our nursing and care facilities. I think in Minnesota we do a great job of that already. I think we have met challenges in the past, we'll continue to do so in the future. On a quick internet search, I know that Minnesota is rated #1 when it comes to senior facilities, as far as people coming from outside in. And I think that's kind of a point of pride for our area, to be honest. I think we do well within District 17 within our own state. And yeah, obviously I think that whether it's facilities or medical equipment within those facilities, I think we need to keep them updated and keep them running well.
So the question is, do I support policy changes to include facilities equipment and that sort? I did support it. 2 years ago when we passed this legislation, this was one of the issues that came up a couple different times and was challenged. When we said we are going to provide this money to these care facilities, but they know how best to use that money. And so I will continue to do that as these issues are addressed, because we're looking at the holistic need. The employees are by far and away the most important asset. The professionals that care for our elderly are the most important asset. They're not the only asset, and we need to look at all of it when we're trying to serve this generation.
I think this is probably one of the questions that nobody's really planning for. As we get people aging now, they're going to want more services, more technology, more things when they move into a long-term care facility or nursing home. And so this is going to be an expensive part of the equation. So yes, I do support increases in funding to go and cover these type of services and building renovations, remodeling. The challenge, once again, comes down to resources. You get a bunch of people that don't want to vote to pay for things where they want to cut a whole bunch of taxes, and there's just not the money to do it. I do want to say that with respect to this, I worked with the late Senator Kubley. We actually got an exemption to the waiver when they constructed the new Granite Falls Manor facility. Great facility, by the way. They were able to go and use USDA's financing authority to help facilitate that process. And that's something I think we're going to have better collaboration moving forward between state and federal programs like USDA Rural Development to go and potentially help finance some of these projects.
Okay, we're going to go quickly to the one audience question we have, and I'll ask you to keep this one to a minute as well on the answer, so we can get you out of here as close as possible to on time. The question is, what can we do to get to full-time employees? The background is I have a lot of staff that won't work more than a certain number of hours due to losing health insurance and other county programs and assistance. So how can we get those part-time employees to full-time?
That is a great question, and thank you for asking that. I have heard that a lot, especially when it comes to our health care premiums and what's affecting families, because if they go $1 over the income barrier, they go way back. And for their hard work and they're getting raises, and then maybe their spouse is getting a job and a raise, and their income's going up, which is what we all want. They hit this level and then they fall off, they get thrown off of insure. And then all of a sudden now they are going to take a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 hit on their income, because now they've really got to pay for health insurance all on their own. That's a real problem. That's more of a federal issue, I'm afraid to say, because it's an income on the what they call the poverty level, or the income grade on that. But also, I sit on the Health and Human Services Policy Committee. Because we are kind of controlling MNsure more than just being on the federal waiver program, I think this is something that I want to look at really hard, because this is an important item that I have heard time and time again, and we've got to make sure that people just don't get thrown off, but maybe there could be a gradual process to change that. But great question, this has got to be resolved.
And I hear about this issue on the doors as well, and it's not an easy one. But we have to always remember too that just living under the poverty level isn't helping anybody. And we all know that a healthy, strong middle class is helpful to all. And so the more that we can help people be independent and on their own, if they, as Representative Baker has said, that if you are just a little bit over, you lose your daycare provisions, you lose your heat provisions or your housing, and it is just, it's a broken system, and it just doesn't make sense. So we need to, this is an all-encompassing situation, and I think that it's not easy because, and I wish that you could have worked on it in the last 2 years if you have heard about it. So, and I was not on that committee, so I would certainly hope that that is something that if it is near and dear, that we can move on that in the next 2 years.
Well, we got to a question that about 3 of us are going to disagree with the other 3 on. This is ultimately a healthcare question. MNsure is broken. MNsure is broken bad. I tell you what, I've gone door to door too, and it's the #1 issue that keeps coming up. Premiums are skyrocketing, and there really is only a few small things that. I don't know if you paid attention to the plan that was pushed out by the Senate Republicans just a week ago, but it has some pretty good ideas. And before my time's up, I'd say make sure that you get out and look at that plan, see what it says. Educate yourself on the issue, make sure that you know what it means before you vote in November, and just remember that that's the way we stand on that topic. So.
This issue breaks my heart because I've seen it, I've witnessed it firsthand, and it's showing up in more ways than one. So some of the examples I see is the right. You have the example of a single mom who, when they start working, they reach that cliff and it just drops off. And I agree, we need to find ways to accommodate for that so that they can be incentivized to work rather than be incentivized to not work, because independent living is exactly what the goal is for everyone. But then I also see it to another degree that would shock people. I know I have heard multiple stories of people at their insurance agents quitting their jobs, calling into their employer and saying, I'm quitting my job, because they are then allowed to have subsidized health care insurance as opposed to working their job. That's not the American dream. That's the American nightmare. We need to address this now. We need to be real bold in our moves. We need to set aside partisan differences. We need to do the things that are best for the people that we represent. We need to do the things that actually can affect positive change, because this is going to be a growing issue. We're not just kind of single moms. One of the things that someone said to me once is specific to health insurance was health insurance is going to become for the rich and the poor. And think about it, that's what's happening. You're either going to be able to afford the insurance or you're going to be on the government. There's nowhere in between. The middle class is getting squeezed out of this, and we've got to do something right now.
It's a living wage issue. I mean, nobody wants to live in poverty. I mean, that's just reality. And if you don't pay people enough to be able to support their needs, then there has to be other types of public supports that come in. And so ultimately, people are working in their own self-interest. If we didn't want to have this issue, we have to pay them more so they can afford to go and cover the expenses. One piece of clarity here, though, I don't understand how repealing MNsure changes the federal poverty guidelines or the tax credits. I mean, if we end up getting rid of MNsure, we go into the federal exchange, guidelines are still the same. So, I know some people up here advocate very strongly that we have to kill MNsure, we have to repeal MNsure. If you want to give up and secede all of our state control to the federal government on this, well, I guess that's your opinion, but let's just not, muddy the waters here. A lot of this is set at the federal level when it comes to respect to the income thresholds. So there's not as much the state legislature can do about it.
This is a great question. This is something that's been irritating me for years. As people improve themselves and as their income go up, with so many of the programs, healthcare was talked about here a lot, but it also includes child care, depending upon the income level, maybe rental assistance, heating assistance, a lot of these things, as people's income go up, it's like they just drop off a cliff. There's a $1 difference in income, and all of a sudden they're not eligible, and all the assistance stops. I would like to see the whole system change so that those assistances get stepped down as their income go up and just don't drop off all at once. Because we want people to better themselves and earn, get better incomes. And again, healthcare has been talked a lot about up here, but I think it's important to point out that the healthcare issue, losing healthcare, was there way before the Affordable Care Act or MNsure. So that's a whole separate issue because people were still dealing with that issue way before that. So this has been going on for years. And it's something that I just am so irritated about. I don't know why we can't get it fixed to step people down off the program rather than just drop them off the cliff.
Thank you. We're going to go to the closing statements now, and we'll start down on the other end this time. And then don't mind me, I'm just going to step in front and take a few pictures too.
Again, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Glen Oaks, and thank you all of you for coming here today. This is important. This is where we engage the people in these forums on these different subject matters, and this is an issue that's very important for Greater Minnesota. I'm sort of the accidental tourist on this issue. Going into the state legislature, I knew that agriculture was going to be an issue. I knew that property taxes was going to be an issue. There's lots of different things that are clear and present, education issues. But this aging and long-term care, by being on that committee, I was brought into a world that I was not previously exposed to, except for through my parents, but in the legislative, in the policy sense. And this is something that affects us in Greater Minnesota in a very big way and touches on all those other subjects that I mentioned. So this is something that I'm going to continue to work hard on. I think that there are great solutions. One thing I like about this subject matter is it is really nonpartisan. We are able to get a lot of things done with the leadership through the different groups that guided us through this. We accomplished a lot of things, and I hope to do more in the future. Thank you.
I would piggyback on that as well, saying that, I grew up in this district. I shared a story about my grandmother and how she's getting older. And, it's important to me to take care of our aging citizens, and pretty soon I'll probably be in that boat too. It seems like the older I get, the faster time goes, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and learn from some of you and have a little chat offline, and I appreciate the opportunity, so thank you.
One of the most rewarding things that I was a part of when I was a member of the House of Representatives was helping the constituents in District 17B. And when you can help constituents with their nursing care issues or being able to facilitate the process through questions that they have that they aren't being able to get on their own is the rewarding part of being a legislator. Making good policy is my number one issue, stance as being a legislator. The politics is what you're hearing on the news. The good policy, learning, listening, hearing from people, and then going back to St. Paul to help implement what you have brought to me, and I'm the conduit between District 17B and St. Paul. So I respect and this process, and I hope that each of you will do your education and your homework as well. I want you to know that all of my pieces of literature have Mary approved on the bottom of the mailers that you receive in your homes. And I do that because of the politics that is happening within the campaign right now. And the independent expenditures are not necessarily are truthful, half-truths. And I think that by telling people every day that the Mary approved part, I will be 100% accountable for. Anything else, you need to look at the other organizations that are bringing it to you and ask them to be accountable with what they're putting on the paper.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for clearing out the place here to have us be able to talk openly about our issues about healthcare, senior care specifically. It's been such an honor for me as a first-time legislator, small business guy, to be able to run and learn so much in the House this year. Sure hope I get a chance to go back, and I hope that the last 2 years have proven to people that, despite all the negative stuff we hear everywhere, you pay attention to what we actually did while we were there. That's really, I hope, what the decision decisions that folks around here have to make. You know, how much did you get done? Did you work hard at it? Did you understand the issue? I think I did a good job. And so, you know, I'm just respectful of everybody up here at the table. You know, it takes a lot for folks like us to do what we do. And we have a real passion for this stuff. And so I just want to tell you thank you for considering voting for any one of us. It's important that we do that on November 8th. And I just, it's been an honor to serve for the last 2 years, and I'm looking forward to hopefully doing it again. And again, thank you, Jim, for your time here. And Aaron, great job today in the forum. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to also say some thank yous here to Glenn Oaks. Jim, thanks for hosting us here today, and Leading Age and the care providers for putting this on, but also for your help at the legislature. I'm not on the health committee, so a lot of these issues I'm a couple steps away from, and hearing from these organizations to me is very important to try and keep up to speed on these important issues. So thanks for that. And also thanks to everybody at this table for the great discussion today. I really appreciate that. Long-term care is important in our rural communities, and first of all, it's important for the care it provides. It's very important work, and we want to take care of the people, our seniors and disabled. We just want to do that. It's the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do. But another important thing to remember is in so many of our smaller communities that the long-term care employees, the people who work in that field, that field is probably the largest employer in the area, and there's a lot of people that work in that field. A lot of jobs are provided, so I think it's important to remember that also. But again, I want to thank everybody here for all the good work you do for our seniors.
Thanks again to everyone that participated. Thank you for people hosting. And I'm hopeful that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, to be able to work on some of these issues and to go on and help provide the resources that are necessary. And that's really what it's a question about, resources. The legislature decides what its priorities are based on what they vote on. And the numbers matter. It's easy to take credit for spending when you've got a $2 billion surplus. You would think the work would have got done on time, but even with that $2 billion surplus we built up, it still didn't get done. I remember my first session back in 2009, 2010, and we faced multiple billion-dollar shortfall. And that was really difficult. And I remember that there were some very painful cuts made in health and human services. There was a lot of really tough decisions that had to be made, but we had to get the budget done. And we got it done on time. It wasn't as much fun. And when we finally got to the point where we had the resources to be able to go and start filling in the hole that we dug over the last decade, getting the state back in fiscal balance, it took a lot of work. I don't want to see us go back to a situation where we're jumping from one deficit to the next. And when people talk about giving huge tax breaks, that's ultimately what we're going to end up back in, because we have to remember, we only have a $900 million surplus. It's one-time money. And if we're going to continue to fund education, to fund property tax aids and credits, to fund health and human services, there's a cost to those things. And I just want people to be aware that this is priorities. It really is about deciding how do we spend our limited resources. And long-term care issues are something I prioritize. So thank you for everything, and appreciate your time.
I want to thank the residents and staff of Glen Oaks for hosting this forum, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules this time of year to come and attend and share your policy viewpoints with us, and good luck out on the campaign trail. I hope it doesn't rain today so nobody gets wet when they're out door knocking.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.